Hey Carol, did you see what I bought myself?
Well, you sent me a text with pictures of it. I sure did. You have new dishes.
Yeah, like I needed more new dishes, right?
Oh, yeah.
But they're not really new.
Well,
They're not really
that is
new.
correct. Tell us the story of your not new dishes.
So I was on Facebook on one of my groups, and this lady showed some dishes that had a pink rim.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, wow, those are pretty. And she goes, look what I got on Marketplace. And people were on the group were like jealous. Those are really kind of rare. And I was like, what are they? And so I found the name because there's two different ones that have this pink rim. There's a Limoges, which is a French one, and then there's an American made one.
Yes.
So I went and I just searched Facebook Marketplace nearby, and the dishes were, they had a whole, well, not a whole set, but most of a set in Arcadia, which is just 15 minutes south of me. And I said, are these still available? And he said, yes. And I said, would you take X? And he goes, let me think about it. 5 minutes later, sure, I will. I said, okay, great. And so I asked the young woman when I went to pick them up after I gave her the money. I said, do you know what these are? And she said, no, I have no idea. She was about the age of Megan,
Uh-huh.
my 32 year
Right.
old. And she goes, I have no idea. And I pulled out one little saucer and I said, these are Castleton Shell Pink. And I said, they were made in Pennsylvania. I said, from a very short time, 55 to 62.
Wow.
And she goes, huh. And she said, are you going to keep them? I said, you betcha. I'm going to use them. So I got somebody's wedding china.
Could be.
I think so. I think it was somebody's 1950s, 1960s.
Yeah.
Because the pieces they have, the only thing they're missing is two plates and the bowls. Everything else is there.
Yeah, my parents had wedding china from 1950, but none of us thought it was very pretty. It wasn't.
Some of it wasn't.
And so I'm not sure where it went because it's like I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it. I I don't know where it went. I'll have to ask my sisters what happened to their wedding china. But anyway,
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Also, Castleton has a turquoise.
it was
They also have a couple other patterns too, but they have that exact same pattern in turquoise. And boy, it's it's pretty. But I'm really glad I got the pink. Shall I? Is it time for me to get it started?
you do
Oh,
need to
yeah,
get
it
it started
is.
before people think that we have flipped over into becoming like a thrifting, antiques,
No, but this kind of ties
vintage.
into
It'll tie into
next week's
it will
episode
tie in. That's
without,
a teaser, D. That's a
yeah,
great teaser. Now
teaser.
start this
All
week.
right, let's get started. Welcome to the Garden Angelus, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I am Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I am downsizing my country garden.
And I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana. I have a suburban garden measured in square feet. It's about a third of an acre.
So she doesn't have to
No
downsize.
downsizing needed.
We call ourselves Garden Angelus because we love gardening and we want you to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. It's time for another episode, D. Hello.
Hello, Carol. So, what's going on in your garden this week?
Well, it is still February, D.
Yes,
So,
it is. And next week is going to be cold.
yes. And this week was kind of cold and they were threatening bad weather. And I had a dentist appointment on Thursday. And I thought on Tuesday, should I call and reschedule? And I thought, it was fine. But anyway, we didn't get any of the weather they said we were going to get. It was just cold. So I've got my houseplants watered. I did a Garden Bloggers Bloom Day post because today is Saturday the 15th.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, so you can see my crocuses, my snowdrops, and the very, very, very beginnings of witch hazel blooms out there. I
I
also,
should go check my witch hazel.
you should, because yours is probably
I have
blooming.
two. Maybe. I don't know. We've had some weird weather.
You have had weird weather. Not that different from mine, really.
Not really.
I,
Oklahoma thinks it's in Indiana.
yeah. I also tended microgreens and I'm starting to eat the next crop of them, mostly on salads. I went to Menards and Garden
Oh
Club.
gosh.
I bought some onion seeds because I knew I didn't have any, even though, yes, I have not organized my seeds. And Garden Club, I should have put something in there. It was very interesting because we had this lady come and talk about how to move and how to dig and prune and do all the things so that you don't wear yourself out or injure yourself.
Hurt yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she gave us a
I
link.
thought you told me about that,
Yeah.
and I thought that was a really interesting topic.
It was. It was. And she had a young helper with her who demonstrated all the moves. Of course, young helper was like 100 pounds and, perfectly fit. And it was funny because she had on a jacket and a longish skirt, and then she took them off and she had this bodysuit that showed all the muscles of the body and like where your intestines are and stuff. And I thought that was very cute. And we laughed because
No way.
no way was anybody in the garden club ever going to appear in person in that suit, but it did kind of help see where things were. So, but she gave us a link to a YouTube video done by a physical therapy group somewhere, and she said they did a really nice job. So maybe we'll include a link in our show notes to that YouTube that shows how to move and prune and do all the things. So anyway, for not much of a gardening week, it was kind of a gardening week.
Boy, it sure was. So here we are still working on the greenhouse. We still haven't fixed it, but we're getting closer. And the gas line. I don't want to talk about the gas line. It has involved our lives for the past several months. It is still not working from the big gas tank, big propane tank to the greenhouse. That part isn't working. But we have some additional bottles. So I do have heat. I have two-stage heat, electric and
Propane,
gas,
yes.
propane. So then, and Bill's going to work on it some more today. Long story. All right. So also, I'm watering my indoor plants, which is taking about twice a week right now because of the heat being on. They're drying out a lot. And so is my
So
skin.
let's talk about that a minute. I don't have that situation here where I feel like the plants need water that often. In fact, I went almost 10 days. Now,
Hmm.
I have gas heat. So, and you have you have propane.
No, I have electric.
So,
I do not have propane because my husband, when he was young, really young, and lived out here, he lived in a mobile home, which had propane. Okay. He had a brand new baby and his first wife, and they ran out of propane in a blizzard. And
yikes,
he said,
never again.
never again. I will always have heat. And so we have electric heat. Now, that has not proven to be true because we've lost electricity a couple of times, but mostly it is true. And I don't know if it's the electric heat. I don't know if it's living in a log house. I don't know.
I don't know because I don't find that I have things drying out quite as much as you do. Could be Indiana. I mean, the climate's just different here. I just don't
Mm,
really know. But
I don't
so,
know.
I mean, and I was thinking about that the other week that, it's good to have like scheduled day of the week. Like I always water my house plants on Sunday or whatever.
Me too.
But
Hmm.
sometimes you really do need to check. It may not need as much watering or it may need more watering. So it's good to
So,
check.
and it might be the type of plants we have.
Exactly. Like snake
I tend
plants
to like plants with great big leaves,
need
and
good.
great big leaves mean they expire a lot of water.
Yeah.
So I definitely don't overwater them. I water them every Sunday, although I did water today because I forgot midweek and I walked in here and I stuck my finger down into the soil and I was like, well, that's dry as a bone. And that's another aspect we should say. Don't just rely on the top layer. Stick your finger down in there to see how dry it is. So anyway, I'm having to water them a little bit more. And then we're supposed to have really bitter cold this week, like negative numbers, and then definitely negative wind chills, like negative 20 wind chill, because this big storm is coming in. I know.
I need to
Carol's making a big
well,
face.
I need to check. I mean, I vaguely recall looking at next week's weather and I don't think anything
I
alarmed
don't think it's
me.
coming to you.
Here in
It's
paradise,
coming to
what
me.
else what else are you doing?
So I planted more nasturtium seeds and I ordered and received my LED lights for for my watering station downstairs.
Very good.
So I'm gonna, I will talk about that in garden commissions. All right, play favorites.
So I'm going to go first. My favorite is is the weather because we did not get snow or ice dumped on us like they kept predicting. I mean, you'd have thought we were going to be like shut down by midweek and nobody was going to be able to go anywhere. And it's like, I went out Thursday morning, and they was like, it might be icy. And further north, I think it might have been icy, but
I think it
the
was.
roads
Yeah.
were dry. There were a few flurries. And I'm like, oh, people calm down. I do like this February weather. It has not been bad. So that's my favorite.
Ours has been all over the place. It's been warm, it's been cold, it's been snowy. We're supposed to get snow and ice this week. We'll see. So so my favorite is my dishes. Just kidding.
Of course it is.
But actually it's my funny little Arizona cypress. It so I planted it years ago and it really suffered for a long time in our climate. It doesn't love it here.
Uh-huh.
However, it has really it's a little weirdly shaped. It's missing two branches. It looks like Charlie Brown's Christmas, but bigger. And I just kind of love it because it's blue and everything else out here is brown and gray. So I like my Arizona cypress. I
Very
will
nice.
take a picture of it for the newsletter, which I'm doing this week.
Yes, you will
Right?
take a picture and you will put it in there because it's hard to take a picture of my weather. I will say that I just filled the bird feeders before we started recording, and it's the time of year when it went down to almost nothing. It was actually nothing, and so I thought, ooh, better fill them.
We
They're
have to fill
back.
ours every day.
They're all back.
Yep. Ours are all back except for right at the moment they aren't, and I suspect it's because there's a hawk around. We have a pair of hawks, and we also have some Mississippi kites. So they like to eat little birds, and the little birds know it. Oh, there's a chickadee. Okay, so they're back.
All right.
All right. So question of the week.
So we didn't really have a question of the week, except we had someone ask if we had seen an episode of another podcast about pricking out and potting up tomato seedlings. That's where they sow a bunch in a little container, and then when they start to get their first true leaves, you kind of prick them out and you repot them. I have
Yeah,
not seen that, but I do know Craig LaHoye, who wrote
does it?
Epic Tomatoes, which is a great book if you
Yeah,
like to grow tomatoes. He always advocated for that method because, like he said, if he has 10 seeds of a variety that he's been keeping for 10 years, he
right.
doesn't know which of those 10 seeds is going to germinate. But by putting them all together, then the seedlings that come out, he can prick those out and pot those out. And that is a very efficient way to handle something like that.
Okay, so the other part of that is I think tomato seeds are big. And if I'm just buying tomato seeds, I'm going to put two in each little
I always put
container.
two.
I don't, and then I just take out the one that I don't use. I mean,
Exactly.
I can think of other seeds like, say, petunia seeds, for
Oh my
example.
gosh. Those are so
So
tiny.
tiny,
So
so
tiny.
tiny. Also, Nicotiana seeds, again,
So
so tiny.
tiny.
There is no way that I can figure out where those. I just do good to get them in something, and then yes, I prick them out and put them in other containers. But tomatoes, I don't really do that. And then you said we got a nice comment from a listener in Namuet. I hope that's how you pronounce it, New
Nanuet,
York.
Nanuet, New York. I looked it up,
And
Dee,
it
because I had no
did
idea.
you? Where is it?
It's not too far from Manhattan, but it's not on Manhattan. It's like, you know, it's kind of like, I guess, in this very southern tip of New York, the state.
I gotcha. And then I'm looking it up. I think this is it. Yeah. Do you want me to read the comment real quick
Sure.
so people know what we're talking about? Okay. Oh, it's Nanuet. It was Namuet in our notes, but it's Nanuet. All right. Hello. I really enjoyed your episode, Like What's New. A few podcasts ago, you were talking about uses for milkweed seed fluff, and it was used for stuffing life jackets during World War One. Yep. I read that in a library book in the 1960s, but I had no idea what milkweed was or even a life jacket because I was a kid living in the South Bronx and everything was concrete and there were no boats. Laugh out loud. But I was reading about it anyway. It is funny hearing about your balmy temperatures because in Zone 5 New York State, it is freezing and we expect to have a nice snow cover with more expected. What a lovely comment.
A very lovely comment. And
So,
and speaking
our
of,
to our
well, I got another
yes.
teaser. I do have a really nice book that if you live amongst concrete and in a city, we'll tell you about it some episode, not this one. Maybe next one.
I actually may have that book too because I like that book. Or I may have a different one and we may profile too. All right. So to our friend in Nanuet, New York. Yeah, it was balmy, then it was cold, then it was sort of okay, and now it's going to be bitterly cold because we live in the plains, which is so different from New York. And those, so storms across the United States go two ways. They either come sweeping down from the Arctic or Siberia and go right down into the plains, which is what this one's supposed to do. And then they'll go on over to, say, Nashville and on their way past Missouri. They'll go to Nashville and then they eventually may get to you guys. Or they do this other thing where they go down and they sweep across and hit Indiana, Chicago, all of those places. And then Oklahoma just gets the tip of those. And that's when Carol and I have similar weather. But
Yes.
a lot of times I will have crazy, crazy we'll have a big high. Like one day it was 70 and then it went all the way down to 20. And that's because of the jet stream and because of the influx of the air from the Gulf. So there you go.
There you go. So it looks like, a typical winter week for me. So I'm going to do a quote so we can talk
Hmm.
about and dream about something in the summertime.
Let's do.
Few people know how to take a walk. The qualifications are endurance, plain clothes, old shoes, an eye for nature, good humor, vast curiosity, good speech, good silence, and nothing too much. And that is Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Yeah, there's been a meme that's been going around on the internet, and it's about walking with a 90-year-old, a healthy 90-year-old.
Uh huh.
And they walk around and they are all inspired by everything they see in this meme, in this video. And I think that's kind of what he's talking about. And it's called an awe walk,
I
AWE.
I think you might have sent me that on the gram.
I might have. You and I send each other fun memes all the time.
Yes, we do.
So, flowers, how to grow great zinnias or zinnias, tips from Florette and our own experiences. So, what made us decide to do this?
Dee, because you're obsessed with zinnias and you said, hey, Florette's got a really nice article about how to grow great
She
big
does.
zinnias. Why don't we talk about that? So I kind of divided it up into what did I do here? 5 or 6 tips.
Yeah, these tips are great and they're really good. I mean, bear in mind, and I want everybody to listen to this. None of us live in that valley that she lives in Washington State. None of
Correct.
us. So, all of my clients, my garden coaching clients, hand me their little packets of floret seeds and they say, I want them to look like
And
floret.
they
And I'm
will
like,
not.
they will not. Now, they may look really great for Oklahoma or for Indiana. And that's what we're going to tell you about. I don't live in that wonderful protected valley,
But
but
in that book on the history of zinnias that we had several years ago, it starts
yeah,
out talking about a zinnia grower in Bargersville, Indiana, which is just a stone's throw south of me. So it
yep.
is possible to grow some really nice ones. So let's go down through our tips.
Here too. Here too.
Mm,
All right. So, first of all, it's a granny flower that is still in fashion.
That is not one of the tips. It is still in
Oh,
fashion.
sorry.
It is still in
Sorry.
fashion.
I got sidetracked. All right, your turn.
So zinnias are from Mexico. They like it very warm. So do not rush them into the ground in the spring if you're direct sowing. I wait, and they're like the last thing that I sow, and usually it's around Memorial Day, which is the end of May. So it's pretty consistently warm, and the soil has really warmed up. Or if you're if you want to sow some inside a few weeks ahead, just so they get sprouted and you have something to plan out. Again, don't do them now. You'll never keep them until they're really ready to go outside. So warm, warm, warm. Zinnias like it hot.
Okay, and can I say something about that too?
Yes.
So you can plant them earlier here, and you can also do two separate sowings. And I suggest that because they get mildew
Uh-huh.
midsummer, late summer. So do a later sowing too. You have lots and lots of time. The other piece is if you sow them too early in Oklahoma, it's not so much the soil's warmth that'll get you, it's our copious rains in the springtime. I can't tell you how many times they wash away. All right.
Well, I believe that last spring and early summer, we heard how many times they washed away for you, Dee,
It was 2 years ago, not last year.
2 years ago.
All right. 2 years ago. Oh my gosh, it was terrible that summer. All right. So spring. All right. So you said full sun, right?
That is tip number 2, full sun. Give these the best full sun right out there in the open.
Tip number 3 is plan for your support and plan for it either when you sow the seeds or when you set out the plants, whichever way you want to do it. And the support I like the best in my little square deals is I have this wonderful thing that Teresa Byington from Rose Chat told us about. And it's this wonderful support that is this stretchy material. A lot of people use, I don't know what that stuff is called, and I tried it and I didn't like it. It's that mesh that you pull off the roll and you cut it and you put the stakes in and you attach it and then you raise it as it goes. Well, that's really a pain in the patootie, and it's white most of the time, although it does come in other colors. The thing Teresa told me about, which you can buy on Amazon, and we will put a link in the newsletter and in the show notes, is this black stretchy material.
Right?
And this stretchy material comes in 4x4 sizes. And so you can use it as a plant support for anything that you grow in that method, the 4x4 method. And it works great. And I put in my 4 stakes or 6 stakes or 8 stakes if I do three. Yeah, it'd be 12 actually, but I don't do that many. So you put the hooks on each side and then you stretch it and it just stays there and you can lift it as they grow. It's awesome.
That is awesome. The other thing is, if you don't have that many, you could just put large stakes next to them, not tall stakes,
You
I
could.
guess, as long as
You
they're
could.
fairly well anchored. Or you could do like I do, and I don't stake them, and I just let them flop over because, yeah.
You don't care.
Now, this number 4 tip is this is from Florette, and I did not know this, so I copied in exactly what she said. You want really
It's
tall
true.
stems, and that's whether you're selling them, which we're not, or you're just wanting to get a nice vase of them. And she
You have to
says,
pinch them.
I'm going to quote, the secret to getting the longest stems from your zinnias is pinching them when they are young. Here's how it's done.
It's true.
When plants are between 8 to 12 inches tall, take sharp pruners, snip the top 2 to 3 inches off, just above a set of leaves. This signals the plant to send up multiple stems from below where the cut was made, resulting in more abundant flower production as well as longer stem length. I am definitely trying
Yeah,
that.
I've done it.
I
I've done
didn't,
it
I
for
don't.
2 years.
I am going to
I
try
didn't
that.
used to. I didn't used to. And I'll be honest, I don't use secateurs or pruners. But, bear in mind, she's doing it for a flower farm, so she has tons of them. I just take my thumbnail and snip them off. And you can even do that when you're growing them inside your greenhouse and you're starting to create little plants. If you decide you want to set them out, you can pinch them off when they've got, 6 leaves, and then they'll get bushier. And then you put out bushier plants, which are less likely eaten and less likely cutwormed. That's a new term, cutwormed.
Did you come up with that term or did you read that somewhere?
I just made it
I
up.
thought so. I thought
I
so.
It's cut by cutworms, so therefore it's cutwormed. I like it.
So tip number 5 is you want to keep deadheading them if you aren't cutting for cut flowers, because obviously you're going to cut them off for cut flowers. But she said it,
Right.
a zinnia is ripe and ready to cut when the stem is stiff, and you kind of shake it, and if that head wobbles,
Yeah,
it's not ready yet. You want a nice,
it's not ready.
and don't put them in cold storage to keep them like, no, no. They don't like the cold at all. You can put them right into a
Mm-mm.
vase. Now, the other thing that Florette said about them, and I didn't know this, is she said they're considered quote unquote a dirty flower.
Uh-huh.
And so you should put a drop or two of bleach in the water. And I'm like, huh.
Right. Yeah. I only know this because of Ladybug, because of Jennifer, because she's a flower farmer. She's taught me a lot of this stuff.
Well, what does she mean by
There was
dirty
one of
flower? Like it's got the powdery mildew and that'll.
got a lot of they got a lot of bacteria on the
Okay.
stem.
Okay.
So you don't want to, they're going to not last as long, or they'll kill other things in the vase if you don't, bleach them a
Right.
little. So the
And
other part is if you want to save seeds, like I did last year
sure.
from that Tide Pool mix, you want to let them grow until they look dusky and the seeds mature from the bottom up. And there's a bunch of videos on that too. Maybe we'll talk about it later in the year. And then there was another piece of that. Oh, with florets seeds, I'm just going to say this, and I mean it in the most respectful way. A lot of what she showed people of like Alpenglow and all of those other seed mixes she had, those flowers were really past their prime. And that's when they get that kind of dusky look.
Right.
And so people were kind of dismayed and would send me pictures last summer going, these don't look anything like florets. And I said, well, just let them grow until they're almost dead. And then they will look like that. But be careful, because if you let them go to seed,
They'll shatter.
they'll shatter and they'll quit producing flowers for you.
It's kind of a tricky
They're
thing.
like,
And
it is tricky.
I had one last piece of advice. Did you see it, Dee?
Yeah, you say it.
Grow the varieties that you love so you'll enjoy them more. If you don't like those dusky, pale ones and you like the big, bright Crayola crayon colored ones, by golly, grow those. Grow what you love because you'll enjoy it more. Just you will.
Here's the other piece of advice that goes along with that. Those giant Crayola colored ones, the ones that are brights, they're easier to grow than the pastels.
They are. And you know what was wonderful about them?
But
Bees and butterflies will love them.
they will. And the other bugs don't like them as much as they do the light colored ones. Also, they don't show bug damage as much. So Crayola is not a bad thing in this case.
It is not. And I saved some zinnia seeds. I saved some zinnia and gustifolia seeds to see if those would come back. And I decided I don't care if they're white or yellow or whatever. I just like them because they're
Right.
so carefree and maintenance free. So
Mhm.
I will be sowing a bunch of those to see what comes up.
And so we should say that the zinnia and gustifolia, I should say it the right way, zinnia and gustifolias are the shorter ones
Yes.
that have the narrow leaves. Because doesn't angustifolia mean narrow leaf?
Yes,
I think it
it,
does.
it might. It's a small, narrow leaf. It grows to a little mound that's not even a foot tall and just grows without needing to be deadheaded.
Yes, angustifolia means narrow leaf. That's why lavender is lavandula angustifolia.
You are amazing me, Dee, with all of your knowledge. Why don't you do a quote?
I just remembered it from the other day.
Do a quote and we'll do vegetables.
Nowadays, people are so jeezled up. If they just took some chamomile tea and spent more time rocking on the porch in the evening, listening to the liquid song of the hermit thrush, they might enjoy life more. And that is supposedly from Tasha Tudor. And it might be, because she might be the person who would have said a word like jeezled up.
I love Jeezled Up, and it's going to be entered into my new vocabulary. I'll say to people, why are you so Jeezled up over that?
So, our vegetable deal, you did all the work on this, but the infrastructure of the vegetable garden. And this could also pertain to the infrastructure of any garden.
I'll say of any structured garden, which is grown for production purpose versus landscaping.
Attractiveness.
Well, they can be quite attractive.
I think they can too. I think vegetable gardens can be beautiful. Okay, so paths. You want your paths. I say this in every single garden coaching session. You want your paths to be wide enough to comfortably walk through and allow for bending between rows. The average size of the path should be 4 feet. Now, if you're just walking by yourself between the rows and aren't having to haul, a cart behind you or whatever, they don't have to be quite that wide. They can be less wide. But if you ever want to be able to walk with your friend through your vegetable garden, at least one path needs to be 4 feet wide.
So I will say in my vegetable garden, the path is wide enough for the wheelbarrow to fit through and for the
Mhm.
two parts that sit down for them to sit down in the path. That's all the
Right.
wider
You've
they
got to
are.
have it that way. You have to have them at least that wide because you do have to take stuff out of the vegetable
And
garden.
that's
I'm
how
get,
I told the guys that laid it out for me, because I did have it laid out, this current version. I said, that's, don't make them any wider. Because, I wanted to maximize my growing space.
right. You don't have that much room.
So that's what I did. So to think about, yes, if you're going to meander down the path with a friend side by side in the evening, 4 feet. But if you're vegetable garden, you want to be able to get your wheelbarrow through there, and you want to be able to kneel down between the rows.
I'm going to guess that your wheelbarrow is 3 feet wide. Is it 3 feet wide or 2.5?
No, I'm
No,
talking
it's
about the
narrow.
two parts that set down the two legs, that, like, there's the
The
wheel,
handles and the legs.
there's the wheel in front,
Well, the
and then,
top is wider
but I
than
don't care
your
about the top.
feet.
I just want to be able to set it down. If the top is over the beds, I don't care.
Oh, I see. So you can still get it by.
So I
Interesting.
bet my paths they're not hardly 18 inches to 2 feet. I'd be surprised if they were any bigger.
I would want mine at least 2 feet. Okay. Rotation, rotation, rotation.
We have
You
talked
should
about
rotate
rotation. Six
your
ways to
crops.
Sunday.
Please do not plant your tomatoes in the exact same place. And then you say to me, but Dee, you put tomatoes all down that one side of that, I don't know, of your Vago beds. And you're right, I did. But this year, I will put them in the other side, in the
Yes.
other beds. And then the third year, I will rotate them into the potager. And then the fourth year, I will put them back where they were originally. That's
And,
called rotation.
well, the other thing is, if you have just a few of those Vago beds that are filled with potting
Hmm.
soil or whatever,
Say you had four.
so you had
One,
four,
2, 3, 4.
or you could dump the dirt and start over, or
You could,
take
but
out
they're
half
really heavy.
take out half the dirt and start over.
Plus, you're also lucky in that, some of your stuff goes down every year and then you have to put more soil in anyway, potting soil.
Right.
So, or garden soil. But here's the thing I always worry about with tomatoes specifically. They get root knot nematodes, and those are a pain in the patootie. So I move them.
I have never had that. But here's the thing.
I've had
Remember
them.
last spring, my peas all had powdery mildew? Terrible.
Yeah.
So
You need to rotate them, don't you?
they're going clear at the other end of the garden this year. Clear to other end.
And will you plant a legume of any sort in the same place where those were? Or will you just put, like, say, onions or something else?
Well, I had put onions there afterwards. So I believe that that's going to be squash or peppers.
Lettuce or peppers. Yeah, something like that. All right. Raised beds or structures like Vago beds. There's another couple of brands out there. Epic Gardening has one.
Birdie or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. So you said, honestly, you'll spend a little more time initially, but you save so much time in the spring when you don't have to fill up a big garden or till up a big garden. Yeah. And tilling's gone out of style. So yeah, I think raised beds, there's a lot of advantages to them. If you make them tall enough, you can sit next to them on a stool and work. You don't have to bend over all the time. You don't have to get down on your knees. You get to choose what kind of soil you want in them, blah, blah, blah.
And honestly, in the spring, it's, because you don't want to till or work your soil when it's wet, it is hard to
Yeah.
sometimes find a window, because if you want to plant your peas early and you want that soil to be dried out, when is a good time? So I I just can't imagine. When I have a tiller, D, I bought it back in
I used to.
I bought it in 1987, I think.
Mine was 89. I had one of those mantis tillers.
This is a Troy built, and I would love
Uh-huh.
to sell it to somebody or give it away, or somehow. It just sits in the corner of my garage, and it's one of those where if a guy knows how to work on a little small engine like that needs some tune up.
And
So,
they do all the time. The more, in my opinion, the more gardening you can do without big equipment, the better.
yes.
Because you know what? It has issues. So I was watching while you were talking, I was watching a tufted titmouse over in my shrubs over here, and it was wiping its beak off against the shrub because I guess it got its beak wet. It was cute.
That is cute.
This is why we have bird feeders. People are anti-bird feeder right now too, and I'm like, I do it for myself so I can watch them. All right, next, water source.
Exactly. You want to know where the water's going to come from. Now, you have a fairly elaborate water source situation because you've put in the irrigation all over the place, drip irrigation.
Yeah, but the what goes to my Vago beds is really simple. It's one line off of the hose, which is we actually have my husband would tell this better than I would. A frost-free faucet
Huh?
that sits next to the greenhouse. If you live out in the country, I have two frost-free faucets, one up by the well, and I have one out by the greenhouse that we plumbed for. And then next to those, I ran one line, which was a Netafim line, so a hard line. And then I attached my drip to it, and that was for the Vega beds. That's pretty simple. It's more complicated in the cut flower garden and in the potager, but I did it a long time ago. So I'm a big fan of drip irrigation in Oklahoma. It's hot here
Yeah,
and
it does
dry.
get hot. Now, I'm a big fan of knowing where your hose is, and I have a hose that's
That too.
hooked to the faucet, and I use a very lightweight hose. But when I had an irrigation system put in for the front,
Uh
I
huh.
said, "Could you run a pipe down to the vegetable garden?" And they put a spigot in my vegetable garden. It only works when the irrigation system is on, but that's the only time I would ever need it. So, because my irrigation
Right.
system is completely drained every fall, so that it would otherwise freeze and crack the whole thing.
Yeah, mine is not, but we do. So we turn all of our spigots on our hoses. I mean, on our house, on the Silcox, we have Ys, and we shut them off, and then we turn on one Y so they completely drain. Because we also fill fountains all winter, and then I take my hose and I drain it all the way down off the
Yes.
deck
So
down into the back.
you're not
So I'm
leaving
doing it.
water in those pipes.
No, you can't leave them in the hoses. I accidentally missed one stupid sprayer. One.
I
And I'll be darned that thing busted.
I
I was so
remember
mad at
we were
myself.
on the podcast when we were, yeah.
I watched it spraying through the air. But I have to keep my fountains going. So, and there's no, although they're on drip in the summer, there's no water source in the winter. So I have to do it. All right. And then compost piles. I think you should have one.
I do too. And I wrote that I am suspicious of a gardener who doesn't have a compost pile.
I mean, yeah, everybody has one, I think.
Well, if you get
It's
into
just
it,
how elaborate do you want it?
yeah. Yeah. Like I have two bins out there, not three. I have two.
Mine's a big pile. I can see it from here.
Mine are
I have a
two.
pile of shredded leaves and I have a pile of arborist chips. And then the compost pile is right next to the shredded leaves.
So I have two, and every other year or so, I take the contents of one and dump them into the other one until I get to the good compost. And then I sift that and put that around the garden. And then the next year I flip and do the other one and on it goes.
So we both do what's called slow composting.
Yeah.
And if you want to do fast composting, you can read up on it because Lord knows there's a lot written about it. And then you listed proper tool storage. All of mine are in the garage, except I have a few things in my potting shed.
Yeah. And we don't want to talk about tools. I have them in the garage. I have in a basket by the back door. I have tools everywhere. I have antique tools anyway, too many tools. But you want them handy so that they're easy to get to. And honestly, if you have a raised bed garden, I said, there's really three tools you need. You need a cultivator type tool, and it can be one that you can work without. You don't have to have a full size hoe. You can just have a hand cultivator.
Hand hoe.
Yeah. And then you want to have a small trowel for planting,
Yep.
and then some good pruners for cutting off the harvest.
Yep.
And then I'd say
Or scissors.
get yourself a cobra head to do weeding in between, and you're good to
Yeah.
go.
I think you're good. Yeah. You don't need as many tools. I think raised beds are the easiest thing to do.
And
So anything else
well, I was going
I'm
to
sorry, go
say
ahead.
for brand new gardeners, this can be really intimidating. And I was in a drive through at Starbucks, and somehow people find out I'm a gardener. And they said, "Oh, I'm putting in a raised bed. I'm going to put down some landscape fabric and then fill it in." And I'm like, "No, you're not putting down landscape fabric." I mean, they were just going to put like wood on the ground. I says, "No, no landscape fabric. No, no, no,
You don't need it.
no." You do not need
You
stuff
don't
like
need it.
that.
And it does not stop Bermuda grass in Oklahoma.
And it,
It just crawls up the side of it.
yeah, and it really doesn't make for a good base. You don't need that stuff. And so it's intimidating. So I hope maybe we've helped somebody who is like, I would really like to do some vegetables, but I don't know where to start.
Yeah, I hope so. I love my Vago beds. And they don't pay me to say that. I never asked for an affiliate link because they wanted me to jump through many, many hoops for it. And I was like, no, thank you.
No, thank
I'll
you.
just periodically say I like your stuff. How about you do the next quote?
No two persons ever read the same book. Edmund Wilson. And that is true. That is very
That is
true.
so true.
And
Because sometimes you'll like a book and someone else won't.
in the case of the bookshelf, I haven't read this book at all. So tell us about it, Dee.
So I've been following Anya Lautenbach for years and years on
I
Instagram.
have too.
And she's known as Anya the Garden Fairy. And she has written, I think, 2 books. This is her second book. And I like this book a lot. And I bought it because you can always learn more stuff. And I would call Anya the propagation fairy
Yes.
because she knows how to propagate things better
Yes,
than
she
anybody I've
does. Yes, she
seen.
does.
So this is a year, it follows the gardening year from January through December.
Well, wait a minute,
And
Dee. Stop a minute. Let's give did you give the whole title?
you go ahead.
The Money Saving Garden Year, a month by month guide to a great garden that costs less. Now you can go on.
So, okay. So Anya's thing is that she wanted to do her garden and not spend too much money. So she would buy a plant and then propagate pieces of it. This is a very, very good book. Each month starts out with a little thing about the month and what to expect. Let me also say that Anya lives in Marlow, Buckinghamshire in England. So her months are going to correspond differently from our months
That's
as
true.
to what you can do. She's a little ahead of us in February, but not that far, really. She's talking about hellebores. She's talking about crocus. She's talking about all galanthus, all the things people love. And then she also has ADHD and she found out when she was an adult and she said I thought this was really good about
Right?
February. The light levels are noticeably higher in February, lifting my spirits and boosting my energy levels. I would say that's true for all of us. I have ADHD and my mind is always busy, so I like to keep active in the garden, making new beds, clearing out pots ready for sowing or planting, and pruning my summer flowering clematis. Try planting your own garden too and start the groundwork now. Well, that's true in our deals too. So then she says what's in season in each month, what to grow in each month, and different maintenance items. And then she starts talking about master classes. And then February, it is sowing perennials from seed. And so she's actually in this picture, she is sowing. I'm looking at them closely. I think she is sowing. It looks to me like I don't know what she's sewing here because I can't tell from the little tiny leaves. But the cool thing is she's just doing a really good job of showing you exactly how to sow seeds in this particular one. But
Cool.
she shows you how to take different plants and grow them from cuttings, hard cuttings and soft cuttings. If you want to know how to do specific tasks, this is a great book for it.
Cool. And I just looked and I do have that on hold at the library waiting for one of the people that has the 2 copies to return it. And then they can send it to my library branch and I'll have a look see too. It sounds wonderful,
Yeah,
Dee.
I bought it and I think the reason she has done so well on Instagram is people love projects
Uh huh.
and Anya shows you exactly how to I mean, one of the things I've been working on for the last couple of years is propagating lavender. I still haven't got it down. It is hard for me to do it here because it always happens at the same time I'm doing 40 other tasks. And so I can mess it up. And also, it's not the easiest thing. But I've learned a lot from Anya. And so she was born in Poland and she now lives in England and has for a long time.
Very nice. And so that book is The Money Saving Garden Year, a month by month guide to a great garden that costs less. Very good.
So, are you ready for the quote before dirt?
I am.
In a world of plastic wrapped Lunchables and drive through dinners, homegrown and family prepared meals are a delicious act of resistance. Cultivating the patch of earth beneath our feet or trying our hand at garden craft fosters the stewardship and preservation of storied seeds and sustainable land based skill sets. Connections that help us remember how to build a stone garden bed, pickle produce, blend herbal teas, make salsa, or enjoy nutritious meals made with the fruits of our own labors. And that came from a book we profiled this year or the
Yes.
end of last called The Heirloom Gardener, and it's by John Forti or Forti. And I thought that that was just the best quote, and I love that book.
Yes, I love that book as well. So now the dirt. So
Dirt.
I saw this on Instagram where somebody said if you put cinnamon on your houseplant dirt, it will control fungus gnats. And that just sounded all wives' tale-y. Does that really
It
work?
did, didn't it?
So I kind of did a deep dive and, you never know if you've got a good source. I found a government source. I found somebody's website. But I
Yeah.
think the part that resonates is says cinnamon acts on pests mainly as a repellent. They don't like it. But in higher
Yeah. Why would
doses,
they?
it is a biocidal effect and prevents egg laying.
So, fruit gnats.
Cinnamon and its compounds effectively hinder bacterial and fungal growth. But then it says the phytotoxic effects of cinnamon make it a possible herbicide.
Okay.
So this one site
So
said, go
when
ahead.
you and I looked at it together, didn't we see that cinnamon oil is really the thing that's most effective?
Well,
Or is it actual
that's
just pouring cinnamon on your soil?
no, it said that you could sprinkle cinnamon on the soil, but if you were concerned about making a mess with the cinnamon, you could add
Uh-huh.
cinnamon essential oil to the soil. And in time, the gnats will die off and your plant will survive. So
Okay.
I finally decided after reading this, you're not going to harm your plant by sprinkling cinnamon. And if you have a real
No.
problem with fungus gnats and you have a big container of cinnamon from the big box store or from the
Uh-huh.
warehouse store, you could
Or some
sprinkle,
oil.
yeah, you could sprinkle some around.
So I would think that cinnamon oil would be very effective because it'd be really a fresh, concentrated amount.
Yes.
The other part you need to know about this, though, is that don't water your plants too much. Wait for them to dry out before you water them again. That also discourages fungus gnats. So if
Yes.
you're going to use the cinnamon, use it in conjunction with not watering so much, because usually that's how you get a bad case of them.
Yes. If the soil is constantly moist, that is the perfect environment for them to breed in.
I find with a lot of these memes that are online, you have to be careful and go look them up and really, I think this is a good example of you doing that because they might hold a kernel of truth in them,
Exactly.
but they don't apply to every case.
No.
That doesn't matter what we're talking about.
No. And so I would not advise getting a big container of cinnamon and sprinkling it around every house plant. But like
Smell good.
for a while, but then I think you would get it'd be like those cinnamon pine cones at the craft stores at
Yeah, they're
Christmas time.
fake. Yeah.
And then after a
Uh-huh.
while, you're like, I can't stand that smell anymore.
It does need to go. Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Okay, do the next quote and we'll go into our rabbity holes.
I am always doing what I cannot do yet in order to learn how to do it. And that is Vincent van Gogh, supposedly, which is
Oh,
true.
my goodness. Does that not fit in with my rabbit hole this week?
Yes, it does fit in with your rabbit hole. Very much so.
So when I was not in a vintage China rabbit hole, which by the way, my priest friend asked me, where do you buy your china? And I had to laugh because they need china for the rectory because
Uh-huh.
they don't have any china and they do entertain and stuff. And I laughed and I said, You aren't going to go buy china the way I buy china. I go like on eBay and Marketplace. And in fact, a lady reached out to me on Instagram who's local and says, I want you to look at my grandmother's dishes before you get rid of them. I have opened up a rabbit hole there.
Well, maybe,
But
wait a minute. Maybe the grandma's dishes would be perfect for your priest at the rectory.
They might be. They tend to like more masculine
Yeah, that's true.
patterns because they're guys. All right. So, and here's the thing: Grandma China tends to have little flowers on it, but she does have some flow blue. And I said, sure, I'll come look at it. All right. But this is my real rabbit hole, which has to do with our quote. I've been in a gluten-free sourdough rabbit hole. And sourdough is hard enough to make by itself with whole grains like wheat,
Uh-huh.
which produces a lot of yeast. Sourdough grains that are gluten-free, brown rice, sorghum, those kind of grains, buckwheat. Buckwheat makes a purple sourdough starter, by the way. I haven't done it, but I've seen it online. Anyway, I made my first loaf. It was terrible, just terrible, even though I made a pretty good sourdough. And I had made sourdough before in 2020, but I just turned it into pizza crust. This time I'm trying to make actual bread. My second loaf turned out really good. So I have hopes for my third and my fourth. Why would I be doing this, you ask?
Why are you doing this, Dee?
Well, first of all, gluten-free bread that you can buy really
It
sucks, and
does usually, yes.
I'm really tired of bad gluten-free bread. And I did find a really great just regular gluten-free bread that your best friend who's also gluten-free could totally make in an afternoon. Not hard at all. And my daughter actually found it and gave it to me, and then I made it and it was delicious. But I decided I want to do sourdough because it helps feed your gut biome. It
Uh-huh.
helps you.
Yes.
So I thought, that can't hurt because autoimmune diseases and your gut biome are closely aligned. You just got to be too careful about too many fermented things. So I've been in this big rabbit hole and it's been very, very enjoyable. I've also in a rabbit hole about alternative flours that you turn into desserts. And I'll talk about that next week. Your turn.
So I'm down in a rabbit hole chasing after this, and I mentioned her last week, a lost lady of garden writing named B. Jones, and I'm going to post about her on Wednesday. And she was out there in Long Island, and so I've been reading some of her columns that she wrote. There's one from 1958, and she talked about this particular house plant, and I'd have to pull it up on my Trello board, but that you can grow from seed, and it looked really good. But find the seed today, you can't hardly
Uh-huh.
find it. She got in a big tiff with a bunch of readers who were proponents of organic, and she was all like, better gardening through chemistry. So that
Mm-hmm.
was kind of interesting. And then I think she was actually the fashion editor for a while, so wore two hats. I got some good stuff. Somebody sent me pictures of her when they dedicated a garden tour in this one place. So she's just been fascinating to read about her. And I was looking at the Saturday edition of Newsday. The thing was
Yeah, good old news day.
90 pages for
Yeah, back in the day.
90 pages on a Saturday. And
Yeah, I can't imagine,
I
but
cannot
wow.
imagine. So that has been really interesting. And I've really enjoyed, and we talked about last week, Jane Austen at Home by Lucy Worsley. That has been
I love Lucy Worsley.
really good. And I'm bent on getting it done before I have to take it back to the library because I'm reading an ebook version. And so you can't just like
Yeah,
not take it back. It's just going to disappear at some point.
it just goes away. Yeah.
So anyway,
Oh, that reminds me. I got to take that one book back to the library.
and then I went in a tiny little rabbit hole with African violets, but they'll save that for another time.
So, garden commissions. What are you going to do this week?
Well, what did I say I was going to do? Same old, same old. I'm going to water house plants, 10 microgreens. I do need to organize those seeds, and I've said that for weeks. I feel like it's between your fixing your heating in your greenhouse and me organizing seeds. It's just not going to get done.
Yeah, because fixing heating in the greenhouse is really hard. We've traced it down to the relay, but we don't know if there's a bad wire in the relay. And Bill can't stand long enough because you have to stand on a stool
Uh huh.
to reach it. And he can't stand long enough to be able to do it. So it's we're kind of in limbo. And then we reached out to my friend to see if he could do it because he owns a greenhouse company locally, but then he had retinal eye surgery. So, yeah, it's just, we're getting older, Carol.
We
It is
are.
what it is.
So also, I need to. So last week, the guy came and serviced my lawnmower, for the season. Blade is
Yeah.
sharpened, new oil, blah blah blah. He asked me. It said it looks so nice. He says, "Do you have a service and just use this in the fall to mow up leaves or something?" I'm like, "Oh no,
No,
no." Carol mows her
you
own
love
lawn.
mowing the
I
lawn.
love mowing, but my truck has
Mhm.
a bad battery, and I think, I gotta pull that battery out, take it somewhere, take it in, say, "Can I have a battery like this one?" And then have them get me the new battery, and then take it home and put it back
Okay,
in.
can I make a suggestion? I mean, does it work at all? Can you drive it?
If I could,
Can you jump it and drive it?
I don't know. Your suggestion, I jump it, drive it to the place, tell them, "Could you switch out this battery?" And then they'll do it for you.
Yeah. They do it for you at the battery houses
I hope
really
so.
quick.
I hope so. But
They
yeah,
do here because yeah. But, I took I have a little Mercedes that's older. It's like 10 years old now. And mine needed a battery last month. And when we went to go do it, you know what they have to do? You know where the dang battery is in this little
no, I do
GL
not.
500 or whatever it is? It's under the seat, the back seat. They
Well,
have to pull it out.
that would be bad.
That is silly. Silly, silly,
The
silly.
truck is 28
Okay.
years old, by the way. I think
I
they.
have some that old. Yeah. In the company.
So if, you know
Crazy,
what?
right?
I will try to start it. If it starts, I'll run it down and get that done. But if not, it's like, could you come I'll just take the battery out and take it. And I have a,
Yeah, you can do that too. I mean, we do that sometimes unless you have to replace it under the seat.
yeah, they
All
wouldn't do
right. So
that.
my garden commission this week is to install those lights and move those plants that I have down in the basement. I did do this in the greenhouse. Remember they were being eaten by mice, I
Yeah,
assumed.
yeah.
I moved them over to the other stand plant area, other plant bench. And then I moved a bunch of stuff around them that they hate to eat and they haven't eaten them anymore.
Cool.
So there's that. Yeah. You can sometimes trick the little creeps, but this way they'll be protected from the mice.
You are
They might
smarter.
get dusty though, because we're getting ready to do some sheetrock work down in the basement. So there's always trade offs.
Always trade offs. Gosh, Dee. And with that, I hope people feel like they have spent good time listening to this podcast episode and that they
It
didn't
was,
didn't trade it off for something else.
I hope they did something like walk on the treadmill, ride in the car, because this was a long one.
Thank you for listening to The Garden Angelus. I hope you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. We publish every week on Wednesdays at 12 a.m. Eastern Time.
If you subscribe to our free Substack newsletter, you get a link to listen to the podcast a whole day early and links to the products we discuss. Some of these are affiliate links, and those help us pay for the podcast, so we appreciate it.
If you want to help support us, you can use those affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we're in a small commission and it costs you nothing.
Or if you're so inclined, you can set up a monthly subscription through Buzzsprout or make a one-time donation through PayPal. Again, we appreciate it.
We do. Thank you to everyone who has done so. It helps us pay for podcast hosting.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the Garden Gate. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.